I'm the new principal at Riley Creek. I'm coming from Coquille, so that's where I've lived, taught, worked for the last 22 years. So um, I've had, I taught for 19 years, then I was a dean of students for a year, and then I was vice principal for 2 years. So this is my first time in a principal role, and it's my first time being in a new school district since the turn of the century, literally. So, so I'm pretty excited to be here, and yeah, everything's been going really smoothly, and I know that people probably just have more questions than things that I want to tell you. So,
Well, I asked Eric, and I'll ask you too. Just, I think it's helpful for folks in our community. Tell us a little bit about what your sort of personal interests are, what your, just a little bit about yourself,
okay.
and then maybe.
So I was born and raised in Monmouth Independence, which is 8 miles west of Salem, and then I went away to school out of state in Boston, and then got hired in Coquille. Oh, really? Yeah.
Boston.
So I lived there for 4 years, and then moved to Coquille from Boston. So that was a little bit of a culture shock for me. But my mother was born and raised in Coquille. My grandmother was born and raised in Coquille, so I'd visited a lot as a kid. I knew the area and everything. So met my husband there. He was born and raised in Coquille. We have 2 sons who are also born and raised in Coquille. So it's a town that has deep roots for me. And something unique to my situation here is that my husband currently works in Bandon, and we have plans to do that migration here. But my children, who are senior and sophomore in high school, not interested in picking up roots this late in their high school game. So I am, as of Saturday, I will be a weekly resident at Indian Creek in space A8, if you need to find me. So we're gonna do a little commuting for a couple of years until the boys are gone. So I know that Mr. Denning was here for a very long time and was a very important part of this community, and still is. He's not going anywhere. He's helped me out a lot. And so I know that there's probably some apprehension out there about whether I'll stick around or not. And what I've been telling people is that I obviously haven't applied for a job in a really, really, really long time, and I don't want to anymore either. So I'm really hoping this is somewhere where I'll be for a good long time to come. So, yeah. Anything? Oh, hobbies, interests. So I mentioned I did the community theater in Coquille, and family. Do a little camping. Do a little. I don't know. I'm really enjoying my commute right now because even though Coquille is only 15 miles in, we don't go to the beach so often. So I'm really loving the drive right now while it's daylight and sunny and not pouring down sheets of rain and sliding everywhere. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm into.
What did you teach when you were a teacher?
I taught 1st grade, 2nd grade, 5th grade, and I've also done a 1-2 blend before. So I know that was sort of a hot topic when I was hired, was that the school board was discussing the pros and cons of having a blend and sometimes the necessity of that. So I feel like I walked in at a good time because I've had that experience, so I can sort of, I felt like I could stick my head in there and make some calls too. Yeah.
Coquille sort of made history by establishing a daycare as part of their school system there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on SOID for a long time here on the board, and the biggest problem that I saw in the region was daycare and preschool, getting kids so that there's some form of equality by the time they get to kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, if you show up to kindergarten and you're the dumbest kid in class because of whatever reason, that sticks with you forever. You have a permanent stigma. So I guess the question I would have to you, and so it's got money now, so I would really, I think, love to have you get involved with SOAP and see if you can't get some of that money and establish daycare as part of the school. You've got extra rooms right now, and that might be a very synergistic thing to do.
So I know that Mr. Milburn is really interested. We actually talked about this on Monday at our admin team meeting. in the Promising Preschool grant. So that's something that he's also clued in on. And this year, especially with COVID and everything, now we're experiencing this when you talk about kids who didn't go to preschool and then they entered kindergarten. And now we've got kids who didn't go to preschool, and last year they didn't go to kindergarten. And now those kids are in first grade. And so we've sort of, the problem has really had a spotlight shown on it. So Coquille has, the way that they had set up was an early learning center that houses a daycare, a preschool, and K and 1. So those kids were all in a building. What that would look like at Riley Creek would be a wing, right? One of those wings. So the person who actually was the administrator in that building at the time when they got that program off and running is a connection of mine, and she's now the principal at Sayusla Elementary. So she would be a huge resource for me there. But I do think it's something that's pretty important. And one thing, a happy accident that came from starting that daycare was that they offered employees of the school district free daycare, which really helped our retention of teachers and staff, because it's a place they know they can drop their kids off and be safe and out of school, and makes them want to stay employed with them.
And I'm on the hospital board. I wouldn't be surprised because the problem is a lot of the employees at the hospital have a daycare, that you couldn't get some funding also from the hospital.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, this is really something where I think, it's the most expensive thing that you're going to undertake as far as getting kids equalized and getting parents out of poverty. And I think you really need to look for money anywhere you can find it and get really a consortium of people together to fund this. But anything you could do there would be so good for the community.
Okay. Thank you for that. Something else too with when you mentioned the poverty and the generational poverty, and I'm coming, Gold Beach is very similar to Coquille, right? Isolated rural coastal towns where it is generational, right? And I think that something like the preschool or an early learning center where families who need it are able to access it and also establish positive relationships with the school at the same time, where maybe those relationships aren't so positive because generationally, they've struggled in school, they live in poverty, and it's just been a battle all the time. And if we offer something like daycare to this community that's affordable, those relationships, we might be able to shift some of those and the perceptions that some people have negatively.
It'll take a while, but if you don't do it, it's never going to happen. So.
Well, I have to ask where you went to school.
I went to Boston University.
You?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have to ask, what's your connection?
Lived, just in Marblehead for
Oh, yeah.
like 35 years.
So all of my college roomies still live in Massachusetts, and so we visit maybe once every 5 or so years. One lives in Sharon, one lives in Plymouth, one lives in Revere, and one lives in, I forgot, she just moved, but on the commuter rail to get to work.
On the commuter rail, right.
BU was in the news today. I'll tell you later. It's a funny story.
I hope it was funny.
You would not recognize BU if you haven't been back.
No,
in a while.
it's insane.
Wow.
I thought it was an urban campus when I was there in the 90s, but it's really something else now. Anything else?
Other questions?
Did Jeremy tell you the tradition is that when you speak here the first time, you do a song and dance
A
for us?
song and
Ryan
dance?
said that.
I do sing a lot. If you ever are visiting Riley Creek, I do sing. I sing pretty often. Usually have to be inspired by, something.
Well, I guess from the perspective of our club, just so you know a little bit about what we've done historically for the schools, we have a dedicated fund within our budget that is pretty much a sustainable fund. We try to make it a sustainable fund at this point, which is the youth sports. So originally that started out as Rotary basketball, which was for kids roughly, what was the starting age for Rotary basketball? Like second grade?
It was fourth when it first started,
And
but
then
it's gone way down.
fourth, fifth, sixth traditionally, but they did
Right,
have
that
a little side program that was.
Okay, so first through sixth right now, technically the Rotary Club funds Rotary youth basketball, and over the last few years we've helped support with that fund other sporting programs as well for youth that are sort of outside the bounds of what the school funds
Right.
for school sports.
Little league stuff, right?
Yes.
Well, camps, there's a basketball camp in the summer, several days.
And also,
Gonna
when
shoot.
coaches have come to us and said, there's a kid playing school sports in not very good shoes, we can always come up with money for that. Sorry, I interrupted you, Marna.
Oh, I was just
Okay.
saying that we did shoes for a
Oh.
whole team, whole
We did a whole
volleyball team, I
team
think
once,
it was.
yes.
Yeah, once, the coach came to us.
Just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we also do, each year, we have a dedicated budget line for scholarships for graduating seniors, and we have given away between each year, it really depends on what the plans are of the graduates, because we have different pots of money for people going into different fields, but we've given away kind of between $5,000 and $8,000 a year in scholarships.
Wow.
Does that sound about right as far as the number
All
goes?
I heard was the
It's been as
We give away between $5,000 and $8,000 in scholarships each year, depending on the interests of the graduates.
right.
And it depends on our fundraisers as well. If we've had a successful fundraiser. In the past, we've partnered with Prairie Health Foundation and done a big, dinner dance or entertainment, and of course that hasn't happened, but those have been really successful for padding our budget. And we did have Bike the Road recently, which was a really, really good fundraiser for the club, and of course that money is going to be used to help the children's advocacy homes here in town get painted. But what have some of our other fundraisers been?
Well, our main fundraisers have been mostly Bike the Road, the health fundraiser, and our sort of holiday
Right.
bottle auction
bottle auction.
fundraiser. I'm trying to think, are we missing any other?
The turkey trot that gives
And
all
the
that
turkey
food
trot,
to
yep.
the food banks.
Yeah.
The day after Thanksgiving.
And we also had Party in the Park, where we raised
Well,
money.
that a little bit. That was primarily it wasn't a major revenue generator, but
But we have always had at least a dozen nonprofits setting up booths around the park, and it's very well attended by kids in the summertime. It's usually somewhere just before or after the 4th of July, and that would be a really nice event to see come back if we can.
Now, in the past, if you go back far enough, we have been involved time and again with Master Gardeners on the greenhouse and the garden there too. So, I mean, that might be something we could look at doing something with you too.
Yeah. I've been in cahoots with Kelly Timchak about the position of garden coordinator, and so she's getting ready to post that, and so it'll be.
Is Kathy Bowden not going to continue?
She is, but in a different kind of capacity, more of the grant writing and that type of thing. I actually met with both of them to talk about that.
She's done a wonderful job this year.
She has, and I was actually, coincidentally, I was in the garden this morning with second graders picking tomatoes because they're going to go bad if no one picks them soon. So, yeah, I was just there literally today picking tomatoes.
yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how that garden is integrated into the school? Like, what is it? Are there teachers that are using it for education?
Yes, and so since it really got up and flying and then COVID hit, right? Primarily it was Darby Miller that was using it last year, the newer second grade teacher. And so now this year she's got her teaching partner back, and so she's hooking her up with the garden stuff. And then Shauna Martin is my third grade teacher. Darby is having all of her Shauna is going to start doing the garden, so she's kind of building it from the group of kids that progresses through. So every year it'll incorporate another group and another group. And I know that Corey in my middle school science wing uses the I just lost the word. Yes, and that area. And that the garden coordinator in the past had sort of helped him out with some of that work. And so that garden coordinator position would kind of take some of the creek stuff and the garden stuff and make it accessible.
Well, we have AmeriCorps involved too.
Yeah.
So that can get reinstated too, that would be.
Well, and right now, while the weather's nice and kids don't have to wear their masks outside if they're socially distanced, there's suddenly an uptick in the number of teachers who are interested in what the garden has to offer. So that's awesome, right? So yeah.
I know it was a big deal a few years ago about raising food for their lunch programs.
And they do.
They really were excited about it.
They do a little bit of that, and they did a little bit of it last year. And this year, what was cool in the summer program was Darby ran a summer camp. I think it was like 5 weeks or something. And at the end, we were able to post on Facebook and have community members who wanted to come harvest some of the vegetables. That was I thought it was awesome that it's beautiful and well maintained and produces, which is so awesome.
I know that McKinsey is supposed to give a report on summer programs at the board meeting tonight. Do you have any insights as to what he's going to say? I'm curious if you could say anything about what the results of the summer program were this year for kids.
He's probably going to talk about the garden a bit because that was a huge hit. And then Darby actually did a cooking right after on the heels of her gardening where kids used the materials harvested in the garden to actually prepare food. It was awesome. He'll probably talk about that. He'll probably talk about the pool was a hit, the busing to Brookings. That was really popular with kids. Shauna Martin and Corbett Altman did a mountain biking where they had access to bicycles, and they took the kids out and took them to parks in the area, and they rode bikes, and that was a huge hit. And he'll probably talk about the benefit of kindergarten boot camp, which was an opportunity for incoming K kids who didn't attend preschool due to COVID, or who did attend private preschools due to COVID or whatever, to come in and go to school for a week before the actual school year started, which I think was huge for those little people who some of them had never even set foot in the building.
Who sponsored that?
That was all funding we got from the state due to COVID. They just shoved tons of money out to every school district and said, you didn't get to build relationships. You have kids who are struggling academically. You have kids that are struggling social emotionally. Here's a bunch of money. Make summer programs cool. And so it was this. It's a little sad because it's a one-shot deal. So we're not going to be able to offer near the opportunity that was offered this year for programming, but. It was awesome all over the state to see what some kids got to do.
Yeah, so we've got a big grant of money, and I don't know if you've talked to Kyle yet, but I'll give him your name, make sure he contacts you. They've really been put as a coordinator for the state and federal for a lot of these early learning programs as well. I mean, and so there's...
Well, Brian, I don't think that actually Kyle's probably not the right person to talk to, because Sarah, actually, who runs the Learning Hub, that's under SOWIB, so she's fully integrated into that, and her purview is early learning. So
Yeah, I'm just saying Kyle's the person over the top of all this.
I think she should talk to Sarah.
Okay, well...
I'll talk to anyone, so it doesn't matter.
I just want to, we have a daughter who does preschool in a state south of here,
Okay.
we'll mention. And it's 2- and 3-year-olds, and it's a team approach, and the parents are included in the classroom with their 2 and 3-year-olds, and then separately to help them learn how to be good parents for 2 and 3-year-olds and preparing them for school. And we can put you in touch with her if you'd like to find out what the details of that program are.
That's pretty
It
awesome.
just sounds like it's great. And,
Yeah.
you know, and forget that it's Palo Alto. These are kids coming from East Palo Alto that are not working at Google and all those
Right.
places.
Right. That's a really interesting idea. Yeah, I would like to hear more about that.
Do you have other things that you can see immediately that as issues for the school district that need community support?
Community support. Absenteeism is a rough one here, and it's rough everywhere, but that's a big one, and I don't know what the answer is to that, because again, you're talking about, I mean, it's families, the same families over time with the same issues and the same, attendance is a rough one, but I don't know what the answer is to that, so, you know, if you guys figure it out, it's awesome. But I can't think of anything right off the bat where,
Did the school district get an attendance advocate hired yet?
no. And again, going that angle with somebody who, it's kind of like the garden coordinator position, only it's attendance. And it's where we'd hire someone who's not currently an employee, right? So it'd be somebody who doesn't have a relationship with the kids.
Yeah.
And I think when you're talking about attendance, that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, right now with my chronic absent kids, I rely a lot on David Fonkin because he knows the kids and I don't know the kids. They don't want some lady they don't know telling them to go to school, the same way they wouldn't want an attendance advocate that they don't know telling them to go to school. So I think the key is the relationships, but I'm not sure. The only thing I know to do is just to start building those, and that's going to take time. So that's where I am with that.
How are we doing with busing? I just read an article about some Salem schools that are just terrible with not having bus drivers.
You guys want to talk about all the best topics? Yeah, so I'll be honest with you, transportation is hurting. We had a driver out and kids in Agnes didn't get to come to school. And that doesn't sit well with anybody, right? That those kids don't get to come to school all week because their driver is sick.
And there's no backups.
And there's literally no one. So Jack this morning actually was pretty excited about an applicant that he had, a woman who used to drive Greyhound bus, which means she has all of those pieces of licensure in place and just needs time behind the wheel of a school bus. I don't know what the timeline looks like on that, but if you know anybody who is remotely interested in driving a school bus, I mean, he could really use them. It's tough. And some of our kids are on the bus for a long time because they've got these routes because they're short-staffed or whatever. And yeah, we need more.
Right before school ended, our kids didn't get picked up a few times. The bus just, I don't know what happened. And then I'm calling Tina. Tina, should the bus be there? Because they're calling me from, they have to walk a mile to their bus pickup.
Ugh.
And so they're standing there and it's raining and they're trying to figure out what the heck is going on.
And can I just say on a side note, totally unrelated, that if anybody needs to know anything, they call Tina.
Oh, absolutely.
She is amazing. I really honestly don't know. I don't know where I'd be without Catherine and Tina. They have been huge help to me. Huge. Tina's just off the charts.
On bus drivers, other states are having the National Guard, who are trained to drive big trucks, come in and do their small school buses for them.
It's no joke, and I know part of it is, and it should be, like, you shouldn't just put anybody behind the wheel of a school bus. I shouldn't be driving a school bus, but it's so difficult to, I don't know, but I was talking to Eric, bus driver Eric, and he's licensed in Oregon, was thinking about moving to California, decided not to because of the hassle of moving from state to state with that type of licensure is so rough. So I imagine there are people on the other side of the border, right? Like, I would totally move to Oregon, but I don't want to go through that hassle of moving my license, and a lot
Well,
of red tape.
and there was a period where DMV wasn't even doing the testing for the, so there's a backlog of people that need to go through DMV to get their licensure.
And our situation is different than like maybe an article about somebody from Portland or Salem or somewhere that's populated, because ours are just, we don't have people here. Salem and Portland this year, what they're facing is, well, they didn't have kids coming to school last year, so they laid off a fat number of bus drivers.
Wow.
And so now that they need those bus drivers back, bus drivers found other jobs.
Right.
Or bus drivers don't want to come back to work, or they're having a hard time. That's where some of their problems are coming from.
Well, and the trickle down is that on the busing thing, for the after school program that we run, we're required to provide transportation, but we can't provide transportation unless the school not only has their busing covered, but has enough extra staffing to provide busing for us. And at this point in time, that's not possible. So, you know, we basically are going to need to get an exemption from the state to be able to not provide transportation, which we probably can get, but the reality is that that's not serving the kids that need the program. So it's if you know people that can drive a bus.
Anyone. And if you can drive a truck, you can drive a bus. So if you any truck drivers who now want like 70 mouths on their load, that'd be awesome. My mom drove bus when I was growing up in Independence, Monmouth, and she loved it, but she doesn't want to drive bus in Gold Beach.
I have a hard time driving an SUV.
I know. I can't imagine. It's not for me.
Well, are there any final questions? It's 12:40. If you guys want to wrap up and have casual talk, and then anybody that wants to meet over at Wally's house at 1, I'm going to head over there. But other than that, unless you have anything more you want to add.
No, but thanks for letting me come, and it was nice to meet everybody. Some again.
Thank you.
But thanks.